you're selling against features, you're selling against everybody else. Just because you have something that looks cool on a website doesn't mean it's going to accomplish what you think it's going to accomplish. One small creative approach changed the course of that entire product line for a company that became one of the leading product lines in the industry.
All right, here we are. Get Busy Podcast Studio with Dan Hogan. You are IT, marketing, kind of a theorist on different business practices. You have worked with huge brands, and you have a kind of a different way of approaching marketing.
That would be correct.
And IT, right? And really everything that you've done. Yep. So I thought maybe what we could do here is start with your background, because I looked at your bio and it's like pages long and I couldn't memorize all of it. So let's talk a little bit about, your background and how you got into consulting and IT and marketing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my background in marketing really started back in college when I was a marketing manager for a management consulting firm whose focus was primarily on skill-based curriculum targeted at C-level and VP-level companies. So what I did was I came in as a marketing manager and tried to figure out creative ways to approach that particular audience in all different kinds of industries. Some of them were government and government entities. Others were private businesses. Some of them were public traded companies. So during the course of that job for a couple of years, it was ideal for me because I got in front of very senior level people talking specifically about their problems, what was stagnating their growth, or what was an hindrance to figuring out how to grow.
This?
And I was full-time in college doing the same thing.
That seems a bit, mature for a college student.
Yes, well, I was motivated fiscally to get things done. So.
All right, so you did all of this unexpected, honestly, practice management consulting in college.
Correct. Yes.
Right? And so what was the next phase of your career?
What that opened up for me was an opportunity. I went to school in Oregon, so I'm from Portland, Oregon. And during the course of my college studies, it became pretty evident that there weren't a whole lot of opportunities in particular areas that I thought that would be exciting. So I specifically targeted business administration as my background with a focus on marketing and international marketing. And my aspirations were to do something on an international level. And at the time, back when I was in school, I won't tell you when, but when I was in school, there was a lot of Japanese investment in the Pacific Rim, particularly up in the Northwest. So I looked at a couple different industries and ended up in electronics. So I transitioned out of a marketing position with a management company into electronics, and that really opened up a real great opportunity for me that has spanned 30 years now. So with my emphasis on applying leadership skills and my background in figuring out creative approaches to help companies grow, at the same time looking at what was happening in electronics, it really created an opportunity for me to take some creative approaches.
Right. We need to talk about that. You keep saying creative approaches.
Right.
And, so first of all, just so everyone knows, you are not only an IT and marketing expert, you're an entrepreneur. You're a serial entrepreneur. You've worked for yourself for a long time. Mm. And so let's talk about how that experience has influenced this creative approach that you're talking about. And then I want to talk about what you said before we were even rolling. You said nobody is buying on value, which made me I wanted to slam my head into a desk because it didn't make any sense. But let's start with the creative approach you're talking about.
Sure. So I very much identify with the entrepreneurial approach, but for me, that started within smaller companies as an entrepreneurial type of opportunity.
Right.
And
for
just
those
to give
who don't know what an entrepreneur is, because it's kind of an old school term, right?
Correct.
That's entrepreneurs that entrepreneurial spirits that work within a larger corporation or business entity.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
in some cases, you're just a little bit more confined.
Right. Right.
And you still are accountable to people that, provide direction to the companies.
Right. And sign checks.
My experience, though, in being thrown into consumer electronics in the electronics industry, I had to deal with vendors as well as, at that particular time was the supply chain.
Yep.
And I came in as a product marketing manager. And it was really difficult in some cases where products weren't meeting the expectations of a company, much less our customers. So I took some, when I say creative approaches, I dealt with a monitor manufacturer who was shipping us product that really was subpar. And I had directors from the U.S. office come to our offices, and I put a racetrack out on the conference room table, and I put our competition's name on one car and our name on the other car, and I said, look at the competition. It's just cruising around and creating momentum, and then graphically demonstrating to them the problems we're having. So we would start the car and then go off the track. And I just did that repeatedly until finally, after about 15 minutes, the senior director of the organization that was represented at the table there, he just said, okay, I've heard enough. I've heard enough. So they came back with proposals of what they're going to do and how to fix it, and we held them accountable for it. So it was just, one small creative approach that changed the course of that entire product line for our company that became one of the leading product lines in the industry at the time. So I look at things from the perspective of what is it that's really going to move the needle as a so to speak. And I look at things from the perspective of who's going to be impacted by what we're trying to accomplish here. And when we transitioned from entrepreneurial, being within the confines of a corporation, and then applying those principles from an entrepreneurial perspective, it becomes very challenging for a lot of entrepreneurs who have come from these industry, I'm not going to call it the confines, but the framework of industry, and then they try to apply the same principles.
Yeah,
and the principles
work,
I mentioned
right?
earlier about nobody buys on value. Well, in the last more than 20 years, you've heard this term, what's your value proposition? And you can go on just about any integrated or not integrated, but any IT type of company, whether they're providing services or products, and you see those esoteric messages on their websites.
Yeah.
It's like, what is it you're really doing?
Yeah.
Tell us exactly what you're doing,
Right.
because what you're communicating just doesn't resonate. And so when I say nobody buys on value proposition, you can take just about any example you can think of in terms of a purchase and look at it from the perspective of why is somebody going to buy something?
Give me a real world example of that.
Sure.
Okay.
How about a car?
Let's go with
That's
car.
a substantial purchase
Yeah,
for most individuals.
Yeah.
At least the 99.9%, right? So from the perspective of purchasing a car, you look at the utility of the car. Now, if somebody's really buying on value, right, most of the cars out on the road would probably be, I don't know, maybe a Subaru or something.
Yeah, something
I'm not saying anything
practical.
bad about a Subaru.
Right.
But from the perspective of value, it's like it's got four wheels.
Safe.
It's got everything that you need.
Yeah.
But why isn't that number one in the world? Okay, it's because people don't buy on a list of objective
Right.
criteria,
Right.
and they're going to have these checkoff
It
items.
depends on your definition of value.
Right. Well, that's the whole point that I'm getting to, is that value is usually represented by objective criteria, but people don't buy on objective
No.
criteria. Now, what do they buy on?
Emotion.
Okay.
Right?
Right. It's all subjective criteria,
Yeah.
and it is tied to emotion. So when you translate that to what companies are accomplishing in terms of what it is who they partner with or what they purchase, who they hire, I mean, it's just a litany of things that all come together as a company. It's still based on subjective criteria. And I've been at...
How do you that is an epic mind shift, right? In the way companies think.
Yes.
Right? Because and it all comes down to what is value, right? What's value to me, right? To me, in a car, I need four-wheel drive. I live in the mountains of Colorado, right?
Okay.
So my value
Right.
is going to be different than your LA value, right? So like, how do you math that out?
First, you take the value of what it is you're trying to acquire at this point.
Right.
If you're going to purchase something versus offer it for purchase, is if that value is driving your purchase decision, there's still a threshold. Okay, it's almost like a surreal divide, if you will, between at what point does the objective criteria or the value stop, and now you're looking for something that is really appealing.
Okay,
So
that's what
I'm
you were
gonna,
saying.
So
when
that's
okay.
That's how I'm going to make this connection between objective criteria for purchase purposes and what entrepreneurs should be looking at in terms of what they offer,
Right.
and then look at how they should offer it. So that's where we're going to bridge here from a list of objective criteria that people look at for purchasing, and what they make their actual decisions on are subjective criteria.
Right.
Whatever makes them feel good. And I say that it applies to companies, whether it's a startup or large company. I've worked for some corporations that are over $40 billion, and they still make their final decisions based on subjective criteria, where that's, oh, we don't like that partner, or that partner's great.
Right. That's just human nature, though.
It is human nature, and that's what marketers and sometimes forget. They sometimes forget that it's humans that are making the decision. So now I'm going to get to the point that I was talking about earlier with you about the value proposition. If nobody's really making their final purchase decision on a value proposition, what are they making their decision on? And it's subjective criteria that all rolls up into the appeal proposition. And just about in every industry, you can look at who's driving success in those industries. It's whoever's offering something that's actually appealing to those decision makers, whether
Right.
it's an individual standing in a 7-Eleven looking at, some end cap wanting to purchase a drink.
Right.
Versus, a $40 billion, $100 billion company like Apple trying to figure out whether or not they're going to acquire some other company that is going to inculcate new technology into their offering. It all comes down to that. Does it feel good?
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah.
not always about the numbers.
No.
Yeah.
And so for startups, and it's a lot to process, right? Like when you're building a product or a service or whatever, like at what stage of execution do you build in the appeal process? Is it an appeal process,
Yeah.
or is that in the
Yeah.
judicial system only?
If it's not part of the initial product or
Offering.
even the product conception,
Yeah.
then you're missing the opportunity.
Then I think most entrepreneurs and startups are missing the boat.
They really are.
Yeah.
So what happens, though, during the course of time, during multiple phases of a development process, at some point someone's going to say, hey, that's a great looking product, pick something. And they're going to say, oh, yeah, it's a great looking product, or it does great things. But if they can't figure out how to cross over that divide to specifically say, oh, we're solving a problem, or we're enabling somebody to do something that they haven't been able to accomplish before, then you're going to, I know in other industries that they might use this term as well, but, putting lipstick on a pig is usually what ends up happening during the course of getting ready to launch a product.
But who wants to put lipstick on a pig?
It happens every day.
Right.
Trust
But
me.
like that's just
Yeah.
inexcusable to me, right? And
Yeah.
so what you're saying is if the consideration for the appeal strategy, right,
Yeah.
the appeal part of this product is more intentional at the outset, then you won't when people tell me, oh, we're putting lipstick on a pig, it really pisses me off, because that is unacceptable.
I
right?
completely agree.
Right?
I
Isn't it
completely
the most
agree.
annoying thing in business and in
Yeah.
technology? Like it's a Silicon Valley thing as well. Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of lipstick on the lips of pigs in Silicon
Yes.
Valley in more
I
ways than
spent
one.
almost 20 years of my career in Silicon Valley, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of lipstick.
There's a lot of lipstick out there. We should buy
Yeah.
stock in the lipstick out there. But as a consumer and also as an entrepreneur and a business person, I think that anyone who goes to market with lipstick on a pig really needs to rethink their life choices, because that's a cop out. It is not okay. It is weak, and it's bad business.
It
People
is.
can, when you've got a lipstick on a pig, it looks like a lipstick on a pig, right? Right? Like you can see it a mile away.
Right.
Anyway, I digress. So let's talk about like overcoming that whole problem, especially in tech, right, Dan? Like in technology.
That's the one that resonates with me mostly because that's where I spent most of my career, and I think from the perspective of leaders that have been in electronics, and not just consumer electronics, but in just technology in particular. There are a few individuals who know how to drive success from the endpoint back. And one of the great examples of that was Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And I worked in the Apple Macintosh platform since late 80s. So most of my career has been in that whole space, in imaging and other Macintosh-based platforms. And what I think the most significant thing we can get out of that is they always design for the end user, regardless.
Yeah.
And they're very controlling on some of the things that they've offered as products, but when it really gets down to it, is their expectations are that they understand what the user model is so distinctly that they can design something that's going to be the most advantageous offering that they can possibly find.
Right.
And that's usually what customers are looking for.
Right.
Even if they have this, list of things that check off items, does it do, does the product does X, Y, and Z? And it's like, okay, beyond that, what else does it do? What else can be enabled by the product? And I think entrepreneurs need to look at things. I want to say, I don't need to tell them what they need to do. What I think that they should do, what I advocate, is that they always try to figure out what problem are they going to solve with what their offering is, whether it's a product or a service or a combination of both. And beyond that, problem solving is the objective part. The appeal part is
Subjective.
what else are you enabling them to be able to accomplish
Right.
by using your product or your service? And that's where the differentiation comes in play. And then making it as appealing as possible. And that's where I've had success in my marketing, is that I look at it from the perspective of what has to be offered in order for someone to be compelled to say, I can't live without this.
Right.
Versus, oh, I want that. So I got, a want is a driver for certain, right? But to get to the point where you say, I can't live without this, or we'd be stupid not to buy this.
Right.
And that's really what I looked for in terms of the opportunities to drive success in marketing is, okay, where's that threshold and how do you get over it?
Right. Yeah. And that, like, it's part product development, but like you said, I mean, that is deeply tied to the brand and the market message and the narrative of whatever it is, an entrepreneur is bringing to whatever market.
Yep.
Right. And so, like, when you're coaching entrepreneurs specifically, but really any kind of, C-level person, where do they even start with the appeal process?
My approach to it, more often than not, starts with their messaging. It may not necessarily be anything about the product in and of itself, but if they're using nebulous descriptions of what their product does and not necessarily always focusing on the benefit, if I see something that is a list of features, and I've been taught this from the very early on in my career, if you're not really focused on the benefits and you're selling against features, you're selling against everybody else.
Yeah.
So figure out what it is you're accomplishing from the perspective of what are you enabling the customer or the user in this particular case. What are they going to do differently? And if you're not focused on the benefits, then that's really the place to start. Because
Right.
most people that I speak with and that I do marketing with, you can't just abandon whatever it is you've developed up to that point.
No.
It's just impossible.
Right. Yeah.
No one has a budget like that anymore. So I think what I like to do is I focus on the messaging first, because sometimes their expectations of this list of features, you can go out and find another list of features pretty easily. But the real turning point is quit focusing on features and now focus on the benefits.
Yeah.
And what happens during the course of that is, before I say that, the other aspect of what challenges entrepreneurs is not knowing who their market is.
Shouldn't that be a starting point?
It absolutely should be
You
a starting
gotta know
point,
your
especially
audience,
if your passion is focused on developing whatever it is you're bringing to the market, and you think that this is going to solve everyone's problems, or it's going to be the most enabling thing that you can bring to the market, or you're creating a new category of things. It's like, if you don't know who you're marketing to, then you're going to be engaged in what I call kind of the curbside marketing, which is, let's put everything out on the curb, and during the course of time, it's no longer the curb. Now it's on the edge of the internet, or in your mobile marketing. It's like, just because you have something that looks cool on a website doesn't mean it's going to accomplish what you think it's going to accomplish. And I've got thousands of examples like that, and not to throw Jaguar under the bus, but they just
Jaguar, the new logo.
They just launched a new branding, and
it's
I
not
saw
going that well.
I saw a piece that was done from a snapshot of their chief branding officer, who was making all kinds of excuses. This is my perspective.
Because they took
just
the
one
actual
guy's
Jaguar
right?
away, right? The Jaguar's gone. It's just typography.
Yeah, and it's badly done. I mean, it's very poorly done.
And let me tell you, social media is having a field day with it.
Exactly.
What do you do in that instance, right?
Well, I could spend hours talking about
Right.
that, but that's just one example of not knowing who your customer is.
Right. And so is that just like messaging and design in a vacuum?
It
right?
is. Very much so.
Like, it's Jaguar. Go look at what your people are saying on social media. Like, become a part of the conversation. It's free market intelligence,
Exactly.
right? And they didn't do
There's a principle that was taught to me very early on in my career that I have used, and I've always preached to my staffs and people that I've worked with and all my customers, and that is this: you've got to inspect what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
So someone coming out with a new branding, and with that branding, changing the face of the company, at least attempting to, and without really understanding what to expect, it's literally like just throwing stuff against the wall.
It's also
Let's see what sticks.
inexcusable,
It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
At all.
Yeah.
I don't know what Jaguar's going to do, but they're going to have to do something, because there's like this whole revolt going.
Yeah, and there's other examples that are similar to Jaguar's approach to their brand change.
Yeah.
And I think the other one that is probably very top of mind for most individuals here in the U.S. was the debacle with Bud Light.
Yeah.
There was, and I'm not going to get too derogatory on what they did, but the one thing that they did not know was who was their market.
Yeah.
And they tried to change who was going to buy their product, and they did it in a completely wrong way.
Yeah.
And
that was catastrophic.
That was catastrophic, and they recovered. I think they're recovering from it, but there is a simple principle there: inspect what you expect.
Right.
Right. If you don't know who your customer is, then go find out who your real customer is. So during the course of my career, I've looked at opportunities to help companies be more competitive in the space that they compete in. But I also look to see where else they might be able to get some traction.
Right.
And that's really a great, how would you say, segue for discussions with entrepreneurs, because they know that their product can solve other problems, but they're not necessarily sure how to go about approaching it.
Right.
And I think that what I like to accomplish is looking to see, okay, who is your customer and who is the user? And if it's in a product or even a service type of offering, your customer isn't always the end user.
Yeah.
And, from early on in my career in the imaging space, HP dominated in most of the printing space for consumer, I wouldn't say consumer, let's just say desktop publishing. But their product was not the best.
No, it's
Sorry.
Yeah, it's still
It was not the best.
Yeah.
But they owned the channel.
Yeah.
So their customer was the channel, and they figured out creative ways to approach making sure that on an assisted sale, and what I mean by an assisted sale is if someone goes to the store, they go to an office store or whatever else, and they're looking for a printer, or they're calling up their integrator or their service provider and saying, we need, a high duty, basically a heavy duty printer for 30 people to use. What do I use? HP made every effort to ensure that those people in the channel responded with HP.
Right.
So compete against that, it would be pretty tough.
Yeah.
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 So it's not always your customer that's going to make the final decision on how they use the product, but if you don't understand how you're reaching to the customer, sometimes that could be problematic. And I think this is one of those cases where Jaguar, they don't know who their customer is.
They don't.
They
But
don't.
it just seems like such a basic,
Yeah.
metric to have for
Yeah.
a brand of that. It's a venerable brand. It's a legacy brand. Like,
Yeah.
where are
it
y'all
very
getting
much
your
is.
data? Like,
It
is
very
it?
much is.
Yeah.
I think that I've got other examples where with products coming to market in the consumer electronics space where we didn't have much of a budget to be able to market against the competition.
Right.
But what we did was figure out who was the real customer and then take some approaches to insert ourselves in the thought process to figure out what can we make that's appealing to those customers versus the end user. And some of those included figuring out ways that we could win every product review
Yeah.
from whoever the publisher was or whoever the lab was that was, putting up some kind of a competitive review. We would do whatever we could possibly do to make sure that we're at least in number 1 or number 2 position.
Which is not uncommon practice.
No, it's not uncommon practice, but I think from the perspective of what you can spend your money on, that's going to, at some point influence
Yeah.
your revenue. That's a bigger focus than it would be to go out and let's see how much money we can spend on advertising and marketing. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. When I was editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur Magazine, I spent a summer embedded at Techstars in Boulder, right? Techstars is an incubator accelerator
Right.
for tech. And I kind of wanted to see what was going on. And one of their programs, they're like 6 or 8 weeks, was in session. And, it was crazy in the incubator because, there's drones flying around. There's like shit burning over here. There's all this stuff going on. And there's these 2 guys over in the corner and they had their phones. And these 2 little steel balls were on the floor. And they were controlling the steel balls with their phones, right? And I'm like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever seen. Like, what are they going to do? And Brad Feld was there. I'm like, what is this? And he's like, I don't know. We're just letting them play in the sandbox or whatever. Well, that company and those 2 guys ended up forming an entity called Sphero. And Sphero was the company out here in LA responsible for the BB-8 character in Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's what ended up those 2 balls, being.
Right.
It was just like, and it, it was a story arc of, 4 or 5 years, but it was like, oh, okay. No.
Yeah.
So in that case, like the technology didn't know what it was gonna do, but they
Right.
had funding, right? Like they had a sandbox to play in, so they
Right.
had a little bit longer runway, and and they ended up doing this really cool thing. And I was such a doubter, like what a bummer I was back in those days. But anyway, how do you differentiate between like a BB-8 and what the other type companies were talking about, where you just don't understand your customer, or you don't know, you've got to know before you execute on your technology or idea?
Well, in some cases, you might have a technology that's come together in a product or a series of products, and from an engineering perspective, hey, this is really cool.
Right.
This, you can do things you haven't been able to accomplish previously. But if you can't figure out the crossover between, okay, so how does that become a
thing.
real commercial
Yeah.
driven
Yeah.
opportunity? And that's where the difference, I think, between entrepreneurs and just idea people.
It's the
Because the
it's
entrepreneurs,
the execution.
they have the ideas, but now they're able to take the idea and cross this divide I was talking about earlier from, okay, so let's go figure out a creative way to make this thing into something that someone's really going to want.
Right.
Otherwise, having a nice toy is
Right.
cool, but what
Right.
else can you do with
Right.
it? And I think those opportunities for something along the lines of Sphero are still in the making.
Yeah.
Those are going to come out later.
Yeah, I think so too.
yeah.
And it's, sometimes it's all right to be a solution looking for a problem, right?
That
in that
happens a lot.
case, it worked for them, but they were young, in an incubator, and so they had a little bit of time to play around with what they were doing, and not all entrepreneurs have that luxury, honestly.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
So-
Because they're usually hungry and they
Right.
need to get something
Yeah,
out the door in order to
exactly.
be able to get some funding. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so true that the choosing entrepreneurship is the path of most resistance, and it is hard. And I think no one can prepare you for just how emotional, physical, and
Yes.
fraught the choice of entrepreneurship is, but also how rewarding it can be. Because you can impact the world. You create jobs, you create
absolutely.
opportunity. You're living a dream, even though it's peaks and valleys.
I'm glad you mentioned that because most people have no clue whatsoever
I know.
about the scars that these entrepreneurs have had after spending, weeks, months, years focused on one aspect of what they're going to be offering
Right.
to get it over the next horizon or the next hurdle. And it's just amazing when you think about what you see as a product. You think, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Why didn't we think of that earlier? Well, someone spent the last 3 or 4 years or 5 years or
Mortgaging
10
their
years
house, maxing
trying
out
to
credit
figure out how to
cards.
make that work.
Yeah, it's a lot of sweat equity that goes into most entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah.
Even the retail mom and pop shops, the restaurants, the
Yeah.
food trucks, all of the side hustles. I mean, there's a lot of heart that goes
Yeah,
into
there really
it.
is.
But the thing I love about entrepreneurship is just the stories that come out and the lessons that we learn, not just as entrepreneurs and business people, but as human beings.
Yep.
It's just it's fascinating. I was going to ask you one of the last questions, I promise, but in your field, if you were working Silicon Valley and working at Apple, you've been around this, not your first rodeo, right? Like you've been around the block a time or two. It's all right. I'm right there with you, brother. But the question I have is, in marketing, what impact is AI going to have on marketers and entrepreneurs? And it's out of the box, we can't jam it back in there. But what are the outcomes? Because what I see right now with entrepreneurs and marketers is a complete misunderstanding of the technology and the power, right? Like people use it to write, a deck or what do you see in the future for AI and marketing for entrepreneurship?
Well, let me respond to you in reverse order of your questions, but from the perspective of AI being incorporated more ubiquitously across marketing efforts, that's definitely going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. If it's not happening in your company or in your organization or your group, whatever, I would say you need to figure out more ways to embrace what that could bring to the table.
Yeah.
Now, going back to what is it bringing to the table, and where is it effective? Artificial intelligence being applied for anything that could be automated is the most advantageous place to put it.
Right.
Marketers don't do much that's automated other than connecting dots, okay? During the course of sending out a message in your marketing and looking at all the different avenues that you're sending your message out, whether it's off of mobile ads or game ads or broadcast TV ads, whatever it
Newsletters,
is,
whatever, yeah.
whatever that might be, AI can help connect the dots. Okay, if you haven't connected the dots, then and you're using disparate marketing approaches, it's no wonder you're spending too much money and not getting enough out of it.
Right.
So AI is very effective in accomplishing the automation part of the whole approach. Where I don't think AI works, because you know me, I guess in the last few minutes we've been here, it's the difference between good marketing and great marketing is the messaging.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand who you're messaging to, it doesn't matter what information or profiles or whatever else you feed into AI, they're not going to be able to spit anything out that's going to be effective enough to get someone to be compelled to buy your product or buy your service until you figure out who you're really marketing to.
Right. And what you stand for and who your tribe is, right?
Exactly.
Like it's a whole ecosystem.
And with the tribe comes a vibe.
Right.
And I don't think AI is going to be able to accomplish
it's not vibey.
reaching that vibration with people that I mean, they're going to read something that's going to go, oh, that's nice.
Right.
It's very clean. It's very grammatically
Right. It's
correct.
grammatical,
And
but there's no soul.
That's not marketing.
Right, right.
So.
No, I just think it's really interesting, and I'm sure we're just in the early days of AI,
Yep.
but some of it is scary, and some of it is just fucking bad, right? Like we're just not there with the technology yet, and it's got a long, long way to go. But I think it's so important to run toward it and not away from it.
Along with just about everything else that has been introduced in the tech space for the last 30 years, and a good portion of my background has been in the silicon, in the integrated circuits space.
Yeah.
And I look to see what has happened during the time that I've been around that has enabled you to do something different that you haven't been able to do before.
Yeah.
And people said the same thing 15 years ago about, when Nokia introduced the first phone that could do more than just call and text, right?
Yeah.
They could actually compute on the mobile. And everybody's, oh, that's too
Mobile
far out.
data.
That's just never going to work for you.
Yeah.
And I think from looking at what happens over time, those things that happen that enabled you to do something else, AI is not unnecessarily. People don't understand that there is a lot of hardware now that's being introduced that's supporting the proliferation of AI.
Yeah.
You're going to see more and more of that, especially in 2025. But I think from what I look at from AI's, the effectiveness of AI is going to be in the automation. And that is tied to hardware and software and other types of, middleware that you could take advantage of. But like you said, it seems like it could be scary. And that's where I was talking to someone this last week about some of the videos that they were watching off their social media. And I said, do you realize most of the ones you just cited, some AI engine is creating that video?
Yeah.
That's
especially for you.
Yeah.
Right?
And they say there's no way that happened.
Yep.
I said, absolutely.
100%.
Go back. That wasn't, one of them was Brad Pitt. That was not Brad Pitt saying that. Or that was not Kamala Harris saying that in that last, one of those ads that came out about a month or two ago. It's like, none of that was real.
Yeah.
AI did that. So from the scary element of AI is the abuse of that technology to be able to accomplish something that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it becomes existential, but it's not the first time we've been at an existential moment in the history of humanity. This is one of many, many, and there's so many cool things to learn. Yeah, I don't know. Like I just, I don't know what it means for market. I don't know what it means for anything, but it's really kind of cool.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
Yeah, and you're kind of cool too.
Right.
And I want to thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Purple Couch today.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and
great.
sharing your experience and your wisdom and like all the stuff you're talking about. These are like your sound bites are pieces of wisdom that only come from experience, right? This is not it's wisdom, experience, but also like that emphasis on the execution part of entrepreneurship is so key, and not enough people talk about it. But you and I have seen some catastrophic failures in startups over the courses of our careers. So
don't be afraid. I tell entrepreneurs, and even though they don't necessarily categorize themselves as entrepreneurs, I tell everybody, don't be afraid to abandon something or blow it up when you know its trajectory is going to be not where you want to go.
Right. And
don't be afraid to let go and just blow it up.
Yeah, and it's instinctual sometimes, right? Like it's not just like a numbers game. Like when something's not going right, you can feel it.
I think that's one of the things I've learned over time is, 20, 30 years ago, there were forces that focused on the launch and delivery and not necessarily on where that delivery was going.
Right.
It's like, no, it's never going to work.
Right.
So that's when we went to that little discussion on putting the, lipstick on the pig. That's what happened quite often. But I think now things have transitioned to you can have more control on what it is you're putting out there.
Yeah.
But don't just put it out there and expect that something's going to happen. And that goes back to the curbside marketing, or now it's edge of the internet marketing. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Make sure you know what it is you expect, and then figure out a way to meet those expectations. Because there's all types of products and services available to everybody on any level, whether you're launching a new, whatever it might be, selling in convenience stores, or where you're selling, solutions that are going to be targeting only the top, Fortune 50. Doesn't matter.
Right.
There's enough things in place now where you can test it.
Exactly. And also, to your point, read the room. Jaguar,
Yes.
I'm talking to you, right? Like read the room, know your audience, and know who they are with such a laser, and there's no excuse in this day and age to not know who your target audience is.
I was just going to say this. There is no excuse.
There is
no excuse.
Are you living under a rock? Right?
I don't think a lot of other people don't really understand that the scope of what they tried to accomplish was in light of a new directive internally within the company to focus on they want to go after a younger generation that's going to spend twice as much on a vehicle. And then they took that approach to their marketing.
Oh.
So talk about a disjointed approach.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean.
So if you read all the information that's available, that was their objective, was to reach a younger audience that are going to spend up to twice as much as what a current Jaguar costs. And that was their marketing approach.
Is that like 2 people in the whole wide world, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
epic fail.
Yeah, epic fail.
Thank you so much.
So don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. And
Right.
thank you so much, Dan. I really enjoyed talking with you. Good insights. So
Thanks. Good to
thank
meet
you.
you.